Hi everyone, welcome to this live stream, Negotiate Like a Pro, hosted by Grow with Google. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills training and tools. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Anna, and I'm an instructor here at Grow with Google. I'm so excited that you're here with us. Today, we're going to discuss the art of negotiating. In this workshop, I'm working with my co-instructor, Basim. Later, I'll pass it off to him to answer some of your questions live at the end of today's workshop. If you have questions that you'd like him to answer, be sure to use the Q&A section below the video player by clicking the blue button that says Ask a Question. We'll choose the top voted questions, so make sure to upvote your favorites. If we don't get to answer all of your posted questions, our team will reply directly in the Q&A shortly after the virtual event concludes. We also encourage you to use the chat feature for any comments that you may have, and also to engage with other attendees who are watching the workshop. This chat will be available to those who opt in and can be found directly to the right of the video player on your screen. And if you would like to access the additional resources for this class, click the resources section below this video player on the right-hand side. This includes a copy of today's presentation. You will also be able to access a replay of this virtual event in the future by clicking on demand on the Grow with Google On Air homepage. Also, don't forget to post and share on social using the hashtag #GrowWithGoogle. Finally, you also have the option to turn on YouTube's closed captioning to follow along. To do so, click the closed captioning button directly on the video player on your screen. Now, let's get started. Over the next hour or so, I'm going to teach you about the art of negotiation, including what it means to negotiate, why negotiation is useful, when negotiation is necessary, and the basic steps to use when negotiating. We'll also discuss factors that affect your ability to negotiate effectively, like bias and discrimination, and how to have the confidence to negotiate. Then you'll research a situation you want to negotiate and organize your notes in a digital document. And finally, I'll give you some assignments so that you can continue to practice your new negotiation skills after the workshop is over. In my role as a Grow with Google instructor, I negotiate all the time. This could include negotiating with others on the best material to bring to you, our learners, or what our live stream best practices should be based on our individual experiences. I believe it's important that more people feel comfortable negotiating when the timing calls for it. I'll explain why in a few minutes. Ready to get started? What does it mean to negotiate? Negotiating is when two or more people reach an agreement on a topic of discussion, a contract, or maybe a price. Usually one of those people has the upper hand or the power in the discussion, and the other person is advocating for themselves to get a fair deal. Negotiation requires compromise, and someone might not get exactly what they want, but in the end, both people agree to the solution. But negotiation doesn't have to be hostile or leave one person feeling slighted or wronged. The agreement that's reached should be advantageous to both parties. So that's a lot of theory. Let's talk specifics. What are some of the things you negotiate? The first thing most people think about when they hear the word negotiate is salary. For example, when interviewing for a new job, the hiring manager offers a salary to the candidate, and the candidate has to decide whether to ask for more money and how to make the case that they deserve it. Then, in turn, the hiring manager must decide whether the additional cost makes sense for the business. So negotiating the salary for a new job is important, but there are a lot of other things that may be negotiable. You might also negotiate an hourly rate for a new job, an increased salary or hourly rate for an existing job, in other words, a raise, and other terms of a job offer like vacation or sick time, flexible hours, remote work, a signing bonus, and reimbursements for expenses like college tuition, childcare, relocation, or commuting. Some personal negotiations include the price of a major purchase, like a house or a car, or a fee for a service you need or a service you provide, like those charged by general contractors, freelance writers or designers, mechanics, and lawyers. Finally, some smaller contracts you might not have known you could negotiate include things like your credit card interest rate or your rent. Of course, you can negotiate smaller purchases too, like secondhand furniture or the monthly fee for your gym membership. We're going to talk about many different situations during the workshop, but notice that negotiating isn't always about money. It's also about time, benefits, and quality of life. Keep that in mind as you go into any situation where you need to advocate for yourself. For example, in salary negotiations, there may be extenuating circumstances for why a potential employer can't meet your request, like strict pay bans or budgetary limits. But they might be flexible on other terms of the offer, like working from home, flexible hours, or retirement benefits. This concept applies to other situations too. Maybe your gym can throw in a free massage or a monthly smoothie, even if they can't offer you a better monthly rate. Your next question might be, why should I negotiate? Negotiations can be uncomfortable conversations, and even with the best tactics, you may not get what you ask for, but they're still really important to attempt. The obvious reason for salary negotiation is that if you negotiate a higher salary, you get more money. That's true, but it's also short-sighted. It's not just about this particular job. According to research done at Carnegie Mellon University, people who don't negotiate their first job earn $1 to $1.5 million less than they could have over the entire span of their careers. That's an incredible deficit. Why is that the case? Because when you get promoted in your job later or even move to a new company, your first salary tends to set the standard that your next salary is measured against. In some states, employers aren't allowed to ask what your current salary is before they offer you a job, but many do. Plus, your first salary is a mental benchmark for you specifically. If a hiring manager asks you what salary you're looking for, you might state a lower amount if you're accustomed to getting paid less already. The great thing about negotiating a salary at a new job, though, is that it's an opportunity for you to immediately increase your earning potential, now and in the future. If you've done your research, we'll talk more about that later, you'll have the information you need to ask for the right number. Furthermore, hiring managers expect people to negotiate. So they generally offer a smaller number up front, so there's room for movement. Keep in mind, there's a reason they're offering you the job in the first place. They want you to work there. If you don't ask for more, you could be leaving money on the table that they were willing to give you anyway. There are other reasons to negotiate. Persuasive skills are often cited by companies as important attributes in employees. So being comfortable with negotiating can make you more attractive as a job candidate as well. A sales manager might need to negotiate contracts, and an event planner might need to negotiate the cost of renting a venue. There are 4 steps to negotiating. Step 1 is to do your research. The best way to be prepared going into any negotiation is to research ahead of time. For example, if you're going to negotiate a starting salary at a new job, you need to know what other people in that role are paid on average, so you have a baseline number in mind. You can find this information in various ways. Start by searching online. You can find salary data provided by HR managers or from employees who anonymously post their salaries on websites like Glassdoor, Salary.com, Indeed, and PayScale. Or check the website for the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can even search job information on Google.com by typing in jobs near me or jobs with X salary into the search bar. You can learn more tips like this in our job search workshops on g.co/grow-on-air. Use your job title, location, experience, and any special skills you have to narrow your search. That will help you get a good idea of the salary range. You can also ask others in the field, maybe a friend or a colleague, but know that for many people, discussing salaries is uncomfortable. Asking for a range can take some of the pressure off. Finally, make sure that your roles are comparable. Your experience and your educational background is important here too. If you have 6 years of experience and you're comparing yourself to someone who's had the role for 12 years, you might be bringing different skills to a potential employer, so the pay might be different. Similarly, if you're looking for a new apartment and you want to negotiate the rental price, find out what comparable apartments in that area are going for. Find this information on real estate websites, by talking to listing agents or property management companies, and by asking friends. Once you have a salary or rental price in mind, figure out what you'd like to ask for. Step 2 is to clarify your goal. What do you want out of this negotiation? A raise, a new job title, a better price? When you've determined exactly what you're negotiating for, it's easier to focus on the actual process. Break your goal down into 3 categories. Number one, what's your ideal outcome? In other words, what's your ideal salary or rent or monthly fee based on the research you've done? Remember, this should be attainable based on the numbers you found online or heard from colleagues. Number two, what is your bottom line? What is the lowest amount that you'll accept for this job or the highest amount you'll pay for rent? Keep this number to yourself, but always have it in the back of your mind during the process. Your bottom line should be an amount that you'll be happy with, not one that will make you feel resentful. Use your own expenses as your guide. You don't want to agree to a number that will force you to look for another job with a better salary in 6 months. Make sure the number fits into your personal budget. And number three, what's your plan B? In other words, if you don't get what you want, what will you ask for or do instead? Let's say you want to negotiate a salary, but the hiring manager says this is what they pay every person with this title and level of experience, or they're acting within a strict salary band. As long as this is a number that you can live with, what's something else you might consider asking for? Here are two good options for your backup plan. One, ask for add-ons. What is something else that will improve your quality of life? For a job, you might want more vacation time. This is a perfectly reasonable thing to negotiate if they hold firm on the salary. Or 1 day a week working from home, if that's possible in your industry. There's also tuition reimbursement, childcare expenses, commuting costs, retirement matching like a 401k, a signing bonus, and more. But don't try to ask for everything at once. That's why you create your backup plan ahead of time. Be sure to come prepared knowing all the things you want and think about what your must-haves are from that list. Consider what is most important to you after your best possible outcome. For a new apartment with a non-negotiable rent, maybe you ask the landlord to throw in free internet service or access to the backyard. Something else you could consider asking for is a contingency. If you're asking for a raise at your current job, your manager might want to tie it to specific performance. In other words, if I achieve this goal, then I get this reward. For example, you might need to acquire a certain number of clients, reach a sales goal, or meet another benchmark that makes sense for the company, and then ask your manager to reevaluate. At a new job, they may be willing to let you work from home 1 day per week after you've been employed for a year, so they can evaluate your productivity first. Decide whether this is an acceptable outcome for you. Similarly, maybe a new landlord will agree to you getting a dog after you've paid rent on time for 6 months. On the other hand, if you don't get what you want, whether it's your ideal salary or a flexible schedule, understand that you may need to walk away from the offer. Once you have your goal in mind, you can move on to step 3. Emphasize the benefit to them. In this step, instead of focusing on what makes you a unique candidate, you want to describe how the other person will benefit. For example, if you're vying to rent a new apartment, you might want to tell the landlord how, as an employed professional, you'll always pay your rent on time. Or maybe you're less likely to move after the first year because you're settled in that area and you have ties, which would save the landlord the heartache of having to list the apartment for rent again next year. In other words, demonstrate that this is a win-win offer. You'll both be better off if you can compromise and come to an agreement. Another example, say you're asking your boss if you can start working from home part-time. Instead of explaining that you want the flexibility to pick your kids up from school at the end of the day, emphasize how much more productive you are going to be when you work from home, where your coworkers can drop by for a chat anytime. Make it clear that if you're given this benefit, you'll produce better work for your team and the company overall. The same goes for getting that lease or securing a contract on a service. Perhaps if your contractor can agree to a slightly better deal on today's project, you'll hire them again in the future. You may need to do a little research to find out how the negotiation will benefit the other person. You might need to track your time for a couple of days in and out of the office if you're negotiating work from home privileges. Or you might need to figure out who else might be competing with you for the apartment you're after and figure out why you'd be a better tenant. Finally, step 4, support your points with data. Your research on typical salaries in your area should give you data to support your salary request in a negotiation, but you might want to include other data like the value you add. For example, you increased subscriber retention by 50%, acquired 3 new clients every month of last year, or you wrote an additional 2,000 words on the day you worked from home. If you have a detailed resume, you may have these statistics already. As another example, if you're looking to purchase a house, you can provide the owner with a letter showing that you are pre-approved for the mortgage and can afford it. This way, when you put in an offer, it tells the seller that you are likely to follow through with the closing, which may give them more peace of mind. Let's finish the workshop by discussing bias and how it works against you. Implicit bias can affect you during the negotiation process in a lot of ways. Implicit bias is a prejudice that someone has, but that they're not aware of. We'll talk mostly about bias in salary negotiations here, but that's where the studies have been done, but bias can be present in any type of negotiation. Let's start with gender bias. A commonly repeated statistic is that women earn less than men as a whole because they don't negotiate their job offers. Why? Because stereotypically, women are perceived as disliking confrontation. This may be true to an extent, but it's more systemic than that. Research has shown that hiring managers, both male and female, expect men to negotiate but dislike it when women do, because women who negotiate are seen as aggressive. Even more insidious in hiring is racial bias. There isn't as much research into the pay disparity for people of color as there is for women in the workplace, but overall there is a pay gap between Black and white employees. A series of studies from MIT showed that hiring managers expected Black applicants to negotiate less than white applicants. But after the interview process, the managers reported that the Black job seekers negotiated more, despite white candidates negotiating equally. Furthermore, the Black job seekers ended up with lower starting salaries because they were perceived as pushier. Of course, these aren't the only forms of bias. Some people can demonstrate prejudices against others for disabilities, sexual orientation, religion, or any other number of factors. If you're a woman, person of color, or a member of another underrepresented group, how do you prepare for this kind of situation? First, realize it's not your fault. The best way to avoid this type of bias is to seek out companies that publicize equitable hiring practices. During your application stage, check whether the company is an equal opportunity employer or an employer that pledges not to discriminate against workers for their race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. By law, these companies can't ask you personal questions like whether you have children during the interview process, including the negotiation stage. If an employer asks an outright biased question or makes you feel uncomfortable for any reason, it's a definite sign that you should walk away from the conversation. Another way to avoid companies with biased hiring practices is to network with colleagues with similar roles. That way you'll have a better understanding of company culture and the way management treats its employees, including their salary ranges. Again, the onus shouldn't be on you to change or meet narrow expectations. If at any time you feel discriminated against, you should leave the meeting. You can also file a claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The best way to improve your negotiation skills is to practice. So that's what you're going to do now. It's your turn to prepare to negotiate. First, let's answer the question, when do you negotiate? Choose the right time. We've talked about negotiating salary, but when does it happen? It's not wise to try to negotiate your salary during your first interview with a company unless the hiring manager brings it up. Wait until they've offered you the job before you start to talk salary. But don't wait too long either. If you've already signed a contract, it's usually too late. Next, choose the right opportunity. Keep in mind, not every job offer or rental agreement is meant to be negotiated. For example, some companies hire a group right out of college and pay them all the same salary. In real estate, some years are buyer's markets, some years are seller's markets. If you're trying to buy a home when there's a ton of houses for sale, you'll probably have a lot of luck negotiating. If there's only one house for sale in a coveted neighborhood, it will probably sell quickly. In that case, you probably don't have the upper hand and it won't benefit you to negotiate. Remember, your goal is to buy the house in this situation, so you may need to make compromises. Finally, make the effort worth the payoff. You want to be respectful of the person you're negotiating with. When it comes to negotiating with a small business that might be struggling because of economic circumstances, use your best judgment. Don't haggle just for the sake of it. Be sure you're asking for something you genuinely want. Now let's practice negotiating. First, decide what you want to negotiate. Pick something that has slightly higher stakes or is important to you, like renting a new apartment, buying a car, or asking for a raise at your current job. The examples I'm going to use are about a new job offer, but feel free to substitute the information that makes sense for you. Here's the scenario. Imagine you've been offered a job at a new company with a slightly better title than what you have currently. You're scheduled to meet with HR to discuss the terms, including the salary and benefits. How do you prepare to negotiate in this situation? To prepare for the negotiation, you need research. Compiling this ahead of time will help you to frame your conversation and give you the data that you need to make your case. I'm going to create my negotiation plan in Google Docs, but you can use any word processing application or just a pen and notebook. One benefit of a digital document is that you can access it from anywhere, from any device like your smartphone, in the minutes before your meeting. In your browser, open Google Docs and start a blank document. Alternatively, you can type in the web address docs.new into your Chrome browser. Give your document a title. Record the key details next. For a salary negotiation, include information about you and your current job, like your title, location, years of experience, level of education, and the company size. Include your current salary. Then record your related accomplishments in your document. Include everything that demonstrates that you'd make a difference to the team of the new company. What is your unique value? Use bullet points to organize your notes. If you're not negotiating a salary, think about the information you need to record for your scenario. For example, if you're negotiating the price for a used car, do your research on the value of the vehicle based on its make and model, the year it was manufactured, and how many miles are on it. Next, open Google Search. Start by researching typical salaries for the title you're aiming for. Here's a tip. Use keywords like sales manager, Chicago, college graduate, and mid-level to narrow your search. Or go directly to a specific website like Glassdoor or PayScale to use their filters. Note that you may have to register or provide demographic information to search their data. Next, add a new header to your document for research about the potential job offer or other situation you're preparing for. Then fill in the details you find online. Record the average salary for that position based on your research, plus any other typical benefits you want to include. For instance, maybe you notice a lot of companies are offering signing bonuses or paid parental leave. Add those perks to your list. If you're watching this video on demand, you can pause the video while you search. If you're here with me live, I'll give you a couple minutes to catch up. Now that you've done your baseline research, you can record your goals. Remember the 3 categories: the ideal or goal offer, your bottom line, and backup plan or contingencies. Type each one into the document. Here's what it would look like for a salary negotiation. For your goal offer, put the highest salary you think is plausible, but still realistic. If the average you're seeing in your industry is $55,000, expecting an offer of $85,000 sets you up for disappointment. Then type your bottom line offer. What's the absolute least you'll accept, all things being equal? Your benefits and contingencies will likely affect this number somewhat, but it's okay to have a minimum requirement. You don't want to undersell yourself or your abilities. And finally, the backup plan. This is where you'll record everything you would accept as an alternative to your dream salary. Start a bulleted list, then type anything that comes to mind, including extra paid time off, an upgraded bonus structure, reimbursement for your commuting expenses like train tickets or gas, remote work options, a better title, or a flexible schedule. Remember, these contingencies are all about your quality of life. Think of benefits that will make your life better, but don't cost the company as much as an increased salary would, or expenses that come out of a different budget for the department. If you're researching a different scenario, say negotiating rent on a new apartment, your plan will look different. You might even complete this exercise for something with a lesser value, like buying new clothing. For example, here's how you would negotiate the cost of a washing machine and a pair of jeans. The current situation: the washing machine is being sold at a store for $1,000. Your research online shows that at least 2 other stores have them on sale for $890. Bottom line, you're willing to pay no more than $915. And the backup plan: maybe the store will deliver the washing machine for free, which would save you money on shipping. Or maybe they can offer you a discount on a matching dryer. Consider what a reasonable contingency would be in this situation. Here's another example, this time very much smaller purchase. The current situation: a pair of jeans is being sold in a store for $150. You notice a small defect on one of the seams. Bottom line, you're willing to pay no more than $125. And the backup plan: maybe the store will hem the jeans for you for free, which would save you money on tailoring. Keep in mind that you don't want to spend a ton of time researching a smaller purchase like this. Of course, saving $25 is an awesome outcome, but there's no need to research this for hours. If you can easily compare prices on your phone, that's really all the data you need to make the point to the salesperson. Whichever negotiation scenario you've chosen, put your goal offer in bold type to emphasize it. Then highlight the 2 most important points in your backup plan so you can focus your negotiations. If these requests are standard with the offer or met already, you can move on to something else on the list. Similarly, if there's anything that you frequently see on job postings as benefits but are not important to you, consider listing these as well. Then strike through them. Depending on the company, you might be able to trade tuition reimbursement for regular travel to industry conferences, for example. To find this document in the future, sign into your Google account and open Google Drive. Your research document was saved automatically and can be found in the recent folder. You have your research, so you're ready to go into the negotiation prepared to ask for a specific salary, rent, or price and defend your choice. But negotiation isn't just about the numbers, of course, it's also a mental game. Many people, even those who know exactly what goal they want to meet, find negotiations nerve-wracking. That's why a lot of people avoid it. But that's a mistake. Just as you can prepare for your conversation with data, you can prepare mentally too. Follow these steps. 1, list your talking points. The research you've prepared will go a long way in your discussion, but you'll need other talking points too. Consider writing a loose script to begin the negotiation with. It doesn't need to be something you memorize or bring to the meeting, but outlining what you'll say with some exact phrasing will likely help you feel more comfortable when the meeting begins. In a few minutes, I'll do some role playing and demonstrate how this conversation might play out. Feel free to use any of the sentences we use. 2, recognize the worst case scenario. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable with the negotiation process, but consider this. What is the worst that could happen? The worst case scenario for most people would be that the hiring manager rescinds the offer or laughs you right out of the room. That's always possible, but it's unlikely, especially if your offer is grounded in research. Remember, they offered you this position for a reason. They like you and they think you'd be a valuable addition to the team. So unless you're on completely different pages when it comes to the salary and benefits, they probably want to reach an agreement just as much as you do. 3, identify your nervous habits. When we're uncomfortable, we often change our body language or our voices. Think about what you do when you're nervous, like tapping a pen, picking your nails, or speaking extra fast. Write yourself an encouraging note to remember to breathe and slow down. and refer to it often during the negotiation. I even do this when I'm teaching classes. You can also bring a notebook to occupy your hands. Okay, you prepared your research and your mental game. Now it's time to negotiate. Let's go through a real conversation step by step. Before you go into the meeting or start the phone call, take a moment to collect yourself. There's been a lot of research around how our body language can affect our confidence. Before your negotiation, try breaking into what's called a power pose. Try it now. Stand up straight, put your hands on your hips, and hold your chest high. Take a couple of deep breaths. Feeling powerful in the moments before a negotiation can be the mental encouragement we need to start the tough conversation. It really can't hurt to try. Then demonstrate confidence when you're in the meeting too. Be aware of your body language. Sit up straight and make eye contact. You want to convey confidence, but you don't want the other person to feel attacked. This is true even if you're negotiating over the phone. Nervousness and discomfort can often be heard in our voices. Then have a conversation. Start by saying thank you for the offer or the opportunity. Make small talk if it makes sense in that situation. Then reiterate your interest in the focus of your negotiation. For example, if you're negotiating salary, start by thanking the HR manager for the job offer. Next, if you're feeling edgy or nervous, make a little small talk, especially if you've never met the other person. A friendly chat can help establish some goodwill and diffuse your nerves. You might ask them how the person's weekend was or comment on the weather. It might seem really silly, but showing genuine interest in the person builds a connection. Then reiterate how much you'd like to join the team. You want them to know that you're genuinely excited about the job and you want to reach an agreement that benefits everyone. Remember, this might be your future boss or HR manager, so you want to make a good impression. Finally, be clear about what you want. If they emailed you the salary number ahead of time, then you'll know going into the conversation what you want to ask for next. If they've only expressed interest in hiring you without giving you a number, let them take the lead and give you the number. Let's do a little role playing. Hi, it's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Of course, it's nice to see you too.
How was your weekend?
It was good. I went on a hike with my dogs. How about you?
Mine was good too. I went to the movies.
Great. So I was really glad to hear that you're considering the sales manager position here at Acme Startup Company.
Yes, I'm really excited about the role and how I can help you improve sales on your team. Now, take a moment to consider the offer. Once they've made the offer and told you the salary, give yourself some time to think about it. Breathe deeply as you consider the offer and compare it to your research and the bottom line that you constructed earlier. It's a big decision that you don't need to make quickly. Then encourage them to speak first. You'll need a second to think about your next step at this point, but staying silent can sometimes lead the other person to make a better offer to avoid feeling uncomfortable. Silence also keeps you from seeming too eager to make an agreement. If they make an offer that doesn't match your ideal number, you might pause and say something like, that wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. On the other hand, if they ask you what salary you're looking for, it's fine to respond with a question. What do you have budgeted for this position? This might feel scary or uncomfortable, but the person you're negotiating with probably has a best offer in mind too. Encourage them to say it. Next, use neutral language. Don't accuse anyone of trying to underpay or offend you. Demonstrate the value that you'll bring. Don't focus on the things that you think you deserve. Keep your language neutral, not accusatory. Unless the hiring manager says something overtly sexist or racist, remain polite throughout the conversation. This is true when you're negotiating with customer service agents or potential landlords as well. It's easy to become defensive when you think you're being overcharged or underpaid, but recognize they're doing their job to meet a budget or work with constraints beyond their control. You can still advocate for yourself while remaining cordial.
Great. So I talked to Human Resources and they agreed that the starting salary for this role should be $66,000.
Wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. Because of my education and experience, I was thinking in the range of $68,000 to $72,000.
I see.
If you'll recall from my resume, I have 3 years of experience in this field, and I acquired 3 new clients for my current company this year alone, and I expanded a contract with an existing client.
You're right. I think we can actually do 70,000, but that is as much as I'm able to offer at this time.
That sounds great. I appreciate the offer and I'm happy to accept. The scene you just saw was pretty much an ideal outcome, but of course that's not always how it works out. In any negotiation, there might be a time where you need to use your backup plan. If their first offer is firm, come back with your contingencies and see what else you can get. Folks out there, what do you think would make a good backup plan for this situation? Using the chat feature below the video player, share your ideas with us.
Great. So I talked to human resources and they agreed that the starting salary for this role should be 66,000.
Wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. Because of my experience in education, I was thinking in the range of 68 to 72,000.
I understand. Unfortunately, we work on a strict salary band for this role. I can only go as high as 66.
I see.
I'm willing to offer you a signing bonus, though. That comes out from a different budget. It will be 4% of the annual salary, so about $2,700.
Okay, that helps. Let's see. Are you willing to negotiate on benefits? I see that you offer 3 weeks of paid time off. Could you go to 4?
I'll have to check with HR, but I believe that should be fine.
That sounds great. What's your policy on remote work? Could I work from home 1 day per week?
That is something we do, but not for new hires. I'd be happy to reevaluate in 6 months, though, should you accept the offer.
Great. I really appreciate you working with me. If I can confirm all of the benefits we discussed today, I'd be happy to accept.
Great.
Finally, mentally prepare yourself for the idea that you may need to decline the offer and walk away. That's why you came up with a bottom line earlier in the research process. If the company can't meet your minimum demands for whatever reason, it's okay to find something that works better for you. For example, if the salary a company is offering won't cover the cost of your childcare or rent, then it may not be a good option for you. The same goes for an apartment you're renting or a monthly fee for a service. If the cost is out of your budget, you don't need to put yourself through financial hardship. It's okay to look elsewhere for that job or apartment, even if that realization is profoundly disappointing. However, please remember that every decision and situation is personal. You know your needs best. So, to recap, step 1, do your research. Step 2, clarify your goal, including your ideal number, your bottom line, and your backup plan. Step 3, emphasize the benefit to them. And step 4, support your points with data. And some key phrases you might want to use in your conversation. Are you willing to be flexible on benefits or any other related subject instead? Because of my experience in education, that wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. What is your policy on? And I really appreciate you working with me. Now that you have the tools to negotiate a major milestone like a job offer, it's time to practice your skills in the real world. But you don't need to go to a job interview to learn to negotiate in real life. Your assignment after this workshop is to start small. Pick a low stakes situation like the sale price on a pair of shoes, used furniture, or a gym membership, or anything else with a flexible price. Then negotiate the cost so you can practice all the steps we discussed in the workshop today. That way you can get comfortable negotiating when the situation isn't emotionally fraught. If you end up having to walk away from the conversation, it's truly not a big deal. Hopefully you'll get to experience the best possible outcome, getting exactly what you want. But if you experience the worst case scenario and you have to cancel your cable subscription, it's not going to affect your life in a significant way. You'll get to try out the negotiation process without the repercussions of asking for a raise or changing jobs. So get started. List a few potential situations to negotiate, write a script, and make the call. In the comments, tell me what you're planning to negotiate first. After the conversation is over, reflect on that experience. You may even want to record your impressions in your document. What are you proud of? And you should be proud of yourself. What could you have done better? What surprised you in that process? Then try again. Remember, practice makes perfect. Negotiate the next thing on your list. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get with this conversation. Then when you're ready to ask for something major, you'll be ready. During this workshop, we learned what it means to negotiate, why negotiation is useful, and when negotiation is necessary. We discussed the basic steps to use when negotiating and factors that affect your ability to negotiate effectively, like bias and discrimination. You learned how to prepare mentally so you'll have the confidence for the conversation. You created a document to record your research into a potential situation you'd like to negotiate, and you included your goal numbers, your backup plan, and your talking points. You learned about avoiding bias in negotiations. We showed you negotiation in action with our role-playing exercise. And finally, you received your assignment for practicing your negotiation skills in the real world. This wraps up the presentation portion of today's workshop. Now give us just a few moments to pass it off to Basim, who will answer some of the questions you submitted.
Hey everyone, it's Basim, and I'm excited to answer a few of the questions you've asked throughout this session. And as usual, we've received quite a few. Remember, if we don't get to your questions, we'll go back and answer all the questions on the Grow with Google on their page below the virtual event shortly after it concludes. All right, so on to our first question, which comes here from Eleanor. Eleanor wants to know if, while applying for jobs, the initial application form requires you to state salary expectations in numbers, single amounts, not ranges, only, right? So in numbers only. How do you open up an opportunity to negotiate salary later without losing any competitive edge and being eliminated from the interview pool? That was a long question, Eleanor. All right, so that's a tough question. And it's like what you want to do is remember you don't have a lot of context about the job until you actually begin the interview process, right? So if you find that after the whole interview process that your original salary expectations are not within the scope of that position, as you start to better understand it, it's perfectly acceptable to say that. Just totally look, I didn't see all this coming. You're not committed to any number until, of course, you actually start discussing that during the offer stage. All right, so the next question here is from Justin. Justin wants to know, how do you phrase your response when asked, what is your salary requirement? Much shorter question, thank you, Justin. So that's simple. Literally you can do a couple things, right? So just tell them for this position, I expect X amount per hour or per year, depending on the position. Also, if you want to kind of keep things general, you can, open up for a higher salary. You can always, use a dollar range from lowest to highest. I used to expect anywhere from this up to that as well. All right. Good question, Justin. Next question here is from Andy. Andy wants to know, they always give an offer and want you to just take it. How do you tell when they're open to negotiating or further negotiating, and when to either take it or leave it? And so this is a good question. It's really not, the question is whether or not they're actually open to negotiation. It's really if you are willing to accept that salary that's presented to you. And that's important, right? So this is your time that they're paying for, right? And so, the question really is this worth my time? That's the question to be asking yourself. If it is, then of course you accept it. If not, then you negotiate. And simply, like we said before, if they're not willing to negotiate, then you need to make that decision. Do I walk away? Or if I need this money, do I just take this offer? All right. So next question here is from Yasmin. Yasmin wants to know, hey, I want to negotiate a raise. I've been working for my company for over a year now. Do I need to know the salary of my coworkers or to ask for a raise? And so that's a big no. You do not need to know the salary of your coworkers, and you really should avoid soliciting salaries from them. This can make your coworkers uncomfortable, right? So remember, your goal when it comes to negotiating is really negotiating a raise, in your case, that feels good for you and what you have to offer this company, right? This should not be based on what everyone else is making. Everyone's like, oh, I don't want to make less than everyone else, or I want to make about the same as everyone else. Really, it's about You want to make what's good for you. So really understand that. And that should not be based on what everyone else is making. And remember, you can always do your research online for general salaries, even based on experience as well. Next question here is from Mia. Mia wants to know on employment ads, it states wage negotiable based on experience and skills. And of course, when you present your experience and skills, which then the employer offers the employment wage at the lowest available. So she wants to know, how do you negotiate this? So it's important to understand that most companies go into these negotiations with a range already in mind. If you know your experience is greater than what is expected for this role, it's perfectly acceptable to go back with that information. You can lay out the requirements for the position and then remind them of how much more experienced you are. Of course, you want to have tangible examples from your work history and then use that for leverage at the negotiation table. Next question is from Eleanor. Eleanor wants to know, how do you ensure that items negotiated and agreed are formally put in writing? Please give an example of what that should look like to hold up legally. So great question, Eleanor. And then so really, typically you will receive an offer letter that actually will outline all the aspects of your offer. Now, of course, if any further negotiation takes place after that offer, your future employee should revise that offer letter before you actually sign it. Some companies also, they'll actually have you sign a contract that will usually comes after you go through the whole references process. And maybe even a background check. So it'll all be in writing, either through email or digitally through documents, or people are still doing that paper signing as well. All right, next question here is from Malik. Malik wants to know, how can one effectively negotiate qualifications instead of money? Oftentimes, jobs require a lot more qualifications than the role typically would need. Hey, Malik. All right. So we mentioned in some of our other job seeker workshops that it's absolutely okay to apply for positions where you don't meet all the requirements, as most people really who apply to these don't, right? No one really checks off every single box. So but you, of course, will want to emphasize the qualifications that you do have and know exactly how important they will be to that role. But it's really rare that every candidate checks every single box in the job description. So just get out there, go for it. The worst that can happen is you get the job and now you're stuck with that employer. No. All right, so the next question here is from Gerald. Gerald wants to know, what if the work is very specialized so that salary information is likely not to be found? For example, scanning probe microscopy scientist. I can even say it. So when you talk about that, if there's no salary information that's available to conduct that thorough salary research, then you'll have to set your own bottom line based on what you actually feel your time is worth for your special expertise that you bring to the table. Last question here is from Joanna. So here's my question. This is my question. If we negotiate other benefits in lieu of salary, so what will happen to the salary in the next job if our future salary depends on this one? That's a good question there, Joanna. So it's important, you don't necessarily, number one, need to discuss salary from your past positions. You could go into a new role asking for whatever salary range that the market standard is for this type of role. If it actually does come up, or if you already shared your past salary, you can explain to them that situation, right? You can explain that the company didn't have the budget to really meet the salary range I was looking for, but of course they offered other benefits to really help fit that right size offer. All right, so that was the last question. That wraps up our Q&A for today. Thank you all for joining us for Negotiate Like a Pro. Hopefully everyone learned something new. You can find all of our follow-up resources on the same page you're watching in the Resources tab below the video player. You can also access a recording of today's session by clicking on demand at g.co/growonair. We'll also be sending a follow-up email with a survey for you to fill out regarding your experience in this virtual workshop today. It's really important that we get your feedback so we can quickly improve these sessions and offer content that is most helpful and useful to you and other learners. I'm thinking. All right, so thank you again for joining us for Grow Google today. We will see you next time.